Hello, everyone. We're here with the director, the screenwriters, and the cast of One Night in Miami. My name is Cameron Bailey. I'm the artistic director at Tiff, and we are joined by Regina King, who directed the film, Eli Goree, who plays Cassius Clay, becoming Cassius X in the film, Kingsley Ben-Adir, who plays Malcolm X, Aldis Hodge, who plays Jim Brown, Leslie Odom Jr., playing Sam Cooke, and the screenwriter and originator of the play upon which One Night in Miami, the film is based, Kemp Powers. Welcome. Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for the film.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, I understand some of you would have just seen the finished film for the first time. For those of you who just watched it, I'm really curious to know, what did you think?
Well, I mean, I'll jump in. I just saw it this morning. Man, I was shocked, impressed, floored. I'm super happy about it. I'm super excited because the thing that hit me, I knew what it meant when we came to this and when we filmed it, why we filmed it. But right now, given the current time, the conversations that were had in the film, they touch you so much differently now. They touch you a little bit deeper. They resonate in a whole different way. And I was just like, oh man, like what divine timing is that for this kind of film to hit? Because it touches on all the notes, the responsibility, what we're going through, what we mean to each other, how we need to have a conversation, how we need to have a debate amongst each other. Like it hits every avenue. So I'm excited, as you can tell.
Yes. Anyone else who's just seen the film? Any of the actors?
Yeah, I saw it an hour or so ago. I just came back from the countryside, and it was just a really surreal and beautiful experience because you're watching yourself with these brothers who you were working with for so long, and also watching Regina's work and the love and the attention and the care that's gone into the way it's been cut. But yeah, it was a really intense, emotional shoot in terms of like working as an actor and who these men were and what the experience means or meant was so much. So watching this is different to watching anything else that I've ever been a part of. So I need to go out a few more times
and watch it again. I'm going to dig into some of that in a minute. But Regina, I want to ask you, what drew you to Kemp's play and to adapting it to film? You've directed a lot of television. Of course, you've been acting for years, just coming off your Academy Award, your Oscar for Beale Street Could Talk. Why this project now?
Oh man, everything was on the page when I read Kemp's script, and then I read the play, and it's very rare when you see the playwright do the screenplay and actually write a piece that gives the play justice and the play gives the screenplay justice. Usually someone else has to come in and do that adaptation. And what was very clear to me reading both is that this was, in my opinion, Kemp's love letter to the Black man's experience in America. And that just hit me a certain way, being a mother of a son, a daughter, a niece. And I felt that as I'm reading, we don't often get the opportunity to see Black men share like this, to see them be vulnerable and strong at the same time. And I wanted in on that, I wanted the opportunity to be able to say to Kemp and every Black man that I know, have the opportunity to say, I hear you, I love you, and there is no life without you. And that's what Kemp's story did for me. And I felt like I was the director to tell the story. I didn't really look at it as it being told from a female's perspective, or it just felt like I was supposed to have this, take this and care for this.
Mm-hmm. One of the unusual things about it is that every single main character in this film is an iconic presence. We all know these people. We have images and sounds of them in our mind, and that must have been a particular challenge for the actors especially, but I imagine for all of you. Leslie, can I start with you in terms of portraying Sam Cooke? And we know what he looked and moved like, and that silken voice that he had. What for you was the challenge in getting maybe beyond those initial images we have of Sam Cooke to something deeper?
A leap of the imagination, really, because I understood that what Brother Kemp was doing was show. The whole conceit is to show a side of themselves, a side of these men that we've never seen before. Now, I had tons of images and video and things to listen to on Sam. But what I realized very early was all of those images were Sam like this. They were all of him at work. They were all of him, he's being interviewed. He's performing in some way. And there's no video. There are no images really of him not at work, of him hanging out in a hotel room with his boys. And so that was really to take all that I had, all that I knew of him, and then to take a leap of the imagination. Who might he be, in this hotel room? That was exciting.
Mm-hmm. Eli, I want to ask you about playing Cassius Clay at that moment when he was becoming Muhammad Ali. It really is a character in transition. Now, you're an actor, as I understand, from Halifax, Nova Scotia, so big up, Ken.
Yeah, that's right.
But you're playing an American, an African-American icon. And how did you find that kind of middle ground that he was at in that moment in 1964?
I think it's almost the opposite of Leslie. There's, a plethora of material. Everyone knows who Cassius Clay and Muhammad Ali were, who he was, and everyone kind of watched him grow. Go from a teenager in the Olympics, winning a gold medal, to being the most famous athlete, most famous person in the world. So it's a different challenge because everyone knows it. So when they see you, instantly they're saying, there's an instant comparison. How are you playing him? And so for me, I really just tried to tap into the different people that he portrayed. So when he was in front of the public, he had one voice. When he was amongst family, he had a different voice. When he was speaking on politics and speaking on things with the Nation of Islam and the brothers, he had a different stance and a different posture and a different voice. And I think for me, it was just kind of cluing into those, the word now is code switching, but it's, cluing into that ability that he had to really be many different things to everybody.
We talk about how the story of these men resonates with what's going on right now, but there's some things that are maybe a little bit different. And I'm thinking of the scene at the old house with Beau Bridges' character and Jim Brown. Aldis is going to visit who he thinks is an old benefactor. He knows who this man is, but the audience is shocked by what happens in that scene. I want to ask you and Regina and Kemp as well about why it was important to have that moment where it's just exposed, the kind of the veneer is pulled back and you see what they're dealing with.
Yeah. Who want to start?
Let Kemp take it.
Yeah, go ahead, Kemp. I'll come in after.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because that's the idea for that came from one of Jim Brown's own biographies, because he's written several of his own biographies when he was still young and in the NFL. And in one of them, it's so hard because Jim Brown, he is such an image of power and strength that I jokingly say, like, I'm originally from New York, that if you want to be, if a gang leader is looking for a good nickname, you could call yourself Jim Brown, and people know that you're not someone to mess with. So someone who is that powerful and intimidating, I was wondering, like, okay, a lot of times people are powered by their anger and rage and hurt. That can really drive us far. And in one of Jim Brown's own biographies, he mentioned how he had come back home from Syracuse and he went and visited this old white guy, and the guy didn't let him into his house. He didn't say it he didn't articulate it the way we do in the movie, but it really did say a lot in that little passage. This idea that, like, you might be the richest black man in the world, the most famous, the most powerful black man in the world, but I still have the right to keep you in your place in this very, very small way that might eat at your soul. Because the way we structured the film in the beginning is we wanted to see each of these four guys pretty much take a little bit of an L, take a little bit, like, see a little bit of failure, a little vulnerability for each of the four. And for Jim Brown, it was hard coming up with something. And that was the thing that really, really jumped out, is this idea that, like, all of this power, all of this stuff that we hold him up for is coming from this place of pain, knowing that he's always going to be on the outside. He's always going to be stuck outside that house.
You know, here in Toronto, it makes me think so much of what happened to the Toronto Raptors president, Masai Ujiri, in California last year, where he was pushed back from going on to court to celebrate his own team. Aldis, do you want to talk about that scene as well?
Yeah, so for me, I love the symbology of that scene and what it means to me personally. I grew up, you know, in some interesting parts. And, you know, for a portion of my life, I grew up in a town in Jersey where I was surrounded by the KKK. So I grew up naturally around this static environment. I think that oftentimes, especially now, we're having more and more conversations with people we deem to be associates, close friends, family even, and we're realizing what their truth is and how they see us. All too often, 3 times alone within the last 2 to 3 days, I've had conversations with my family and with my friends who have had experiences with people close to them, and they're saying, wait a minute, I didn't know you saw me like this. Sometimes people see you how they choose to see you, not realizing that they don't see you for who you are. They don't see you as a person. And that's something that is becoming more evident as we continue on in these current times. And it's a conversation that needs to be had and explored with people to say, hey, look, do you realize this is how you see me? Do you realize that you don't see me as a whole human being? Do you understand the danger in that? Do you understand the necessity to check your ego and try to explore who and what you actually are? Because if you don't support my protection, if you don't support my future, then you are in essence supporting my demise. And it's hurtful when you go through that. So I think in that scene, the symbology of it that I love so much, with Jim being this fantastic, you know, magnanimous character that we know, and we think that these characters, these people don't go through these things, but he does. It's a natural way. And it's a part of him using that to build up who and what he is. I think for a lot of people who are watching that can use it as a reminder to learn how to use these moments to build up who they are and not let it break them down. But for those of us also who may not know where we stand, to check ourselves to say, do I empathize with what's going on out there? Do I actually understand what's really happening? Can I have this conversation openly and seek to learn as opposed to profess my own opinions? You know, this is a time where empathy really must be had. And that's something I think we really explore in a great way with the film.
There are incredible conversations, exchanges. I think every character, every actor gets moments to really shine, to express a point of view in the film. That's there, I'm sure, in the original play, but you really bring it out in the film. But you also create a world in this film, Regina, with things like the beautiful production design of the motel scenes, the costumes. I mean, you know, especially Leslie, I think Sam Cooke's outfits, on point. But then also Terrence Blanchard's music, which adds another gorgeous layer. And we're honoring Terrence Blanchard at the festival this year. Regina, I wonder if you could talk about how all of those elements come together to kind of create a believable world for all of these ideas that the film deals with.
Well, very early on, and just this is my approach, no matter what it is that I'm working on as a director. The beautiful thing about being a feature director is you can take more ownership. You can you're not coming into something that's already been established. So for me, it was very important that my production designer, my DP, and the wardrobe designer, we had several conversations because there could be a terrible situation when you have all three of those department heads, including myself, 4, on a different page. If you're choosing greens or blues, and then wardrobe has Sam showing up in an orange, hue, red orange hued suit, then it just blows the whole thing up. So I wanted a film that was very saturated, just because I just feel as Black people, we are just so colorful and we're so vibrant. And even with any of the things that we've gone through throughout history, we still manage some way to find joy, and we still sing, and we still love, and we still laugh. So I wanted the visuals to represent that. And when you get your production designer and wardrobe designer on board with what you set out to do, as far as, in our case, a saturated a tone, it just all falls into place. You say what you want, and people come back with their ideas and their they have listened to what it is that you see and use their gifts to take it even further. And it's about trusting them to do this, allowing them the space to do it. So that was when you talk about those visuals, that's really where it started. And then it's the music, it has been quite the challenge to get there, because we are in the middle of a pandemic. And normally that process of coming up with the score and figuring that out, that would usually be you and your composer sitting in the room doing that. And Terrence and I weren't able to do that. It was a lot of conversations that we had, but it's a lot of sending music and putting it to pictures, saying no, and things that would have been figured out maybe in 2, 3, or 4 hour sessions that would give you a nice, good base. It took us a long time to get there, but when we got there and figured it out, it was quite beautiful. And what we figured out was that I call them the quadrumvirate, as they know, they hear that often. We discovered, Terrence and I, that the music is a 5th character, and that that character's voice is the piano. So the piano is throughout the film. And it also, while that was a discovery, it also made things a little more difficult, because when you have these moments where usually you can lean on another instrument to pass something off, to move, to have a transition or move a scene to the next place, you usually get to do that with several instruments. And I'm sure Leslie is in his mind like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. But we making the choice of letting the piano be that 5th character did kind of put us in sometimes in a certain corner, but the figuring it out made it really, it made that 5th character support the quadrumvirate.
The last thing I want to ask all of you, the play was written and the film was shot before the summer of 2020. But obviously we know what's going on right now is not just going to be about this summer. I wonder what all of you, in light of what's happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Jacob Blake, but also with the Black celebrities who either have or have not been speaking out about this, what you think this story is going to have to say to this generation and future generations of Black celebrities who have a platform and have to decide how to use it.
That was one of my favorite conversations in the film, is when Jim is talking to Malcolm at the table. And, you know, he's saying to him, Sam is speaking out. He's not speaking out like you're speaking out, but he owns his own masters. He's started his own business. He's hiring Black people. He's building an industry, and that's really that's the other foot in the walk to freedom. Yes, you have to speak out, and yes, you have to fight against the oppression. But if you don't have any economic base, then you're constantly going to be at the mercy of someone else. And another funny, I can't say any of the line, but very funny line at that table that Jim delivers that really kind of, you know, shuts him down. And it's like, you know, this guy is working. This guy is putting his talent and his efforts into freeing his people through the gift that he's been blessed with. So I think that's one of my favorite conversations, because you got these two polar opposite ends, but they're both really doing the same thing. They're liberating their people, and you can't have one without them.
Yeah, I think this film in itself is a beautifully orchestrated conversation, and I think it stands to help teach those of us who are seeking how to have the conversation with one another for progress. Sometimes a debate can end up in an argument, and you leave off, you know, far worse than when you started. But for these four men who are huge pillars in their community, in their society, in the public eye, and we have, you know, as you said, speaking to some of the entertainers, celebrity, you know, public personas we have today. Yes, there's a fantastic way we can use our platforms, and I think that this film definitely displays a way that we can deal with one another internally to create that success and that progress externally at an exponential rate, just because of the fact that we have the positions to do it, we have the resources to do it, and you don't have to be famous, of course. I mean, look, Dr. King wasn't famous when he started. He became famous because of his efforts. And we all have that same power and potential, and that's another thing. Same speaks to Brother Malcolm. You know, I mean, he became, you know, and I think it also represents the fact that for anyone out there who doesn't understand their own potential or power, you can become because you are. And that's what this film says to me. And I think that's one of the most powerful elements of those words, brother, and these brothers' performances. And Queen King
is right. I think we are going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're a bit long on time, but I just want to thank all of you for everything you've contributed to this film. I think it is going to get a lot of conversation started, and thank you for taking the time today as well. Aldis Hodge, Eli Goree, Leslie Odom Jr., Kingsley Ben-Adir, the playwright and screenwriter Kemp Powers, and the director Regina King. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.